There was a time when our biggest issue in Joburg was bicycle lanes.
I remember that.
I remember that. Bicycle lane gate.
Oof, I remember that.
Like, I wish, I dream that that was our biggest issue right now. The system, the way that things are set up and structured incentivizes corruption. There's this narrative now that exists, even if it's not said as plainly, that because of the failures of one political party, there's this conflation and this questioning of black leadership as a whole. South Africa is actually at a very interesting point right now, in that we are witnessing in real time a political transition.
For far too long, the South African political establishment has failed South Africans where they live in their towns and cities. Politics has become a hustle for individuals who aren't viable inside of the formal economy. Our institutions are crumbling, our cities are collapsing. And one of the questions that we need to ask ourselves is not who will lead us out of this crisis, but the kind of leadership that we need to bring us out of this crisis. The person I have the privilege of talking to today is one of the clearest voices in answering this question for us. She is a national chairperson of Rise Mzansi and the MEC for agriculture and rural development in the province of Gauteng. Her name is Vuyiswa Ramokgopa. She is a reformer, she is a visionary, and she is a person who's never been shy or scared to build things and to break things and make new things that need to be new. Chair, MEC, it's great to have you. How are you?
Pakanyani, it's an honor to be with you and to feature for the first time on this great platform.
On the inaugural Rise Mzansi podcast.
Oh, absolutely.
It's the first one. I want us to get to know you a little bit better first. I have the privilege of knowing you, and I often wish that South Africans broadly did. We've got this thing in South African politics at the moment where everybody's claiming to be from Johannesburg, but you're actually from here. Which Joburg raised you?
Yeah, so I am quite an anomaly in that I am one of a select cohort of people, I'd say, that actually call Joburg home. I'm a third generation Johannesburg native. My mother was born here from Sophiatown originally, and during the forced removals of the late 50s, was then moved to Soweto. So my mom's from Soweto. My dad is from Davidton, but also similarly, his family hailed from Boksburg, and then during the forced removals also were moved to Davidton. And my grandmother was also born here in Yeoville. So I really do consider the city as my home, and I've had the privilege of traveling and living in other places, but I think my spirit, my energy, my outlook on the world were very much informed and defined by my experience of being from Johannesburg. And I myself was born, actually in Parktown, but at the time my parents lived in Hillbrow. So I grew up walking the streets of Hillbrow, playing in Joburg Park, going to the Market Theatre in Newtown, where my dad was a performer because he's a performing artist. And, and just living and breathing this city. And I've watched from a front row this city as it has gone through its ebbs and flows over the last 2 decades. I opened my first business in Braamfontein on Juta Street, some 15 years ago or so. When was it? 2009. When the city was really picking up again, when Braam was being reborn. I'd like to say exactly. I was one of the midwives of that rebirth, and one of the people that really was in part of that generation of people who were trying to reinvest and rebuild the city. I saw places like Maboneng being born and going again through the ebbs and flows, and so I feel deeply connected, but also invested in what the city is and what it becomes.
Joburg obviously itself is a space that goes through reinvention, as you frame. We've seen a lot. We've gone from a world-class African city to an African city, and I think in many ways, there's an opportunity for us to remake this space. But you also have reinvented yourself multiple times throughout your professional trajectory and career. You've been a small business owner. You have led asset management funds with billions under management. You have been a board member of. Just take us a little bit through your professional trajectory, and what about the texture of your upbringing in Johannesburg has informed some of those things. Yeah.
Yeah, so, I mean, you've correctly framed it. I am officially, I'd say, on my third career, which,
How millennial of you.
right? I'm a slashy of note. But that's also, in a way, I mean, it's a blessing.
Yeah.
It's a blessing to have experienced different industries, to have existed in different spaces and communities and built different communities. I started my first career was in the retail fashion industry.
Jeez.
I actually got my first job when I was 16 years old. I worked for Sun Goddess.
labor.
Well, it was like a weekend part-time job. I was part of the team that opened and started Sun Goddess in Rosebank. I might have even been before your time, but it was obviously, it was.
I remember Sun Goddess for the.
Oh,
for the
okay,
record,
good. That's really exciting. But it was actually just a really exciting time in general to be a young African, and that era and what that brand symbolized in that era. It was, a reclaiming of our identity as modern Africans who, this movement, yes, was kind of coming out of Johannesburg because you had the Stone Cherries, the Sun Goddesses, Kwaito, you had YFM, which was like a voice of young people at the time. And there was this reclaiming and boldness about who we were and the role that we wanted to play and how we wanted to show up in society. And I was very blessed, even at that young age, to be part of that and to see that, face front. And I worked in the Sun Goddess store on weekends. And obviously I wore the clothes and I was like really, I think that's probably where I developed the first real bit of my political consciousness, spending time with Vanya and Tando and other people who were reflecting on what it means to be African, what it looks like to be a modern African, and how we needed to contribute to that process. So that was my first career. I then went into the retail industry formally. I was a buyer. I thought, let me actually train and do this thing. Mind you, I studied politics and economics because I was interested in politics and economics. But when I tried to visualize kind of what that looks like day to day, I think the politics of the time in South Africa didn't look like me, didn't seem like a space where I would really be able to add value. And so it sent me in a different direction. And I'm glad I did. I went into retail. I spent a decade or so in the retail sector. I told you I opened my first business when I was in my early 20s. And it took me on an incredible journey. I then pivoted into the property sector, but at the time I was leading the South African Institute of Black Property Practitioners and doing a lot of work. It's an advocacy organization, so doing a lot of policy work and working at an industry sectoral level, but specifically focusing on issues of transformation, Black economic empowerment, property ownership, financial inclusion, spatial injustice, spatial transformation, and so on and so forth. And really looking at that industry and how, as you have a transformation conversation, you are able to see systematically how exclusion plays itself out. It's really not just about one piece of legislation. It's really about the building blocks of how exclusion manifests itself in our economy and particularly in that industry. So we spent a lot of time. I spent 7 years in that space. I was, involved in a number of industry forums. I spent some time in the Black Business Council. I contributed to the NEDLAC, different working groups and forums, and really started to maybe, let me say, ideate about how one could really be more impactful and contribute more to policy issues of the day. But I soon realized that that really wasn't, moving at the pace at which I would like it to. And that if really one has an interest in changing things drastically, you really can't avoid the space of politics, because even just the way our government is designed, where you have an elected official or an elected representative being the executive authority of a ministry. There's a lot of power that exists and resides in that office. And if you want to see like real catalytic change happening, you need actually to have either the ability to direct the work of that office, or you need to be in that office. And so I think that's really where the seeds were planted of wanting to veer into politics. And as I started to think about the country broadly, the type of change that I felt was needed, the type of leadership that I felt was needed, it became very clear to me that one could not really just sit on the sidelines anymore. And so it was that I then made the decision to move into this space. And I had to let go of a lot. I had to step out of my businesses, step down from some of these boards that I was in. But for me, I think that's the cost. That it's a small cost to pay for the privilege to be able to serve the country and do the things and contribute in the way that I'm trying to contribute every day.
The framing you gave of that hopeful time in your slightly younger days.
Thank you. Well done.
You see what I did there? Is beautiful, but also kind of a little bit depressing, because I remember the extent to which like hope and possibility, I guess, punctuated the urban South African experience, and obviously there's been a significant shift in how we relate to our context and our circumstances. What I'm also hearing though is that you've always had a really strong action orientation. My grandmother always used to say had this adage where, she was like, when you complain about it, excuse my language, you say, shut up and fix it, right? And I know you're a very shut up and fix it type of person. Some people say it takes a pretty crazy person to look at the defining challenges of a context and say, actually, I think I can do something here. So give me a little bit of a sense of why you, why us, and what about you and what has informed the parts of you that kind of look at injustice or look at some of the exclusion you speak of and your ability to place yourself and your abilities and your decisiveness at the center of what the solutions should look like?
Yeah, that's actually, it's a good question. I can say I've had a relatively privileged experience relative to what many other South Africans have. In that I've had access to education. I have grown up in largely integrated suburbs and areas. I have been able to experience all sides, actually, of South Africa. I've been able to experience life kokasi. I've been able to experience suburban life and experience private schools. I have had the opportunity to run a business, to work in a corporate environment, and reflecting on all of that and the era and the age group also that I'm in, which is a very critical one. And I'll tell you why. I feel very blessed, and I think those of my same generation were very blessed to have been able to see South Africa at that turning point of our democracy, and perhaps the decade after, where we were really on a trajectory of being the best version of ourselves.
Alive with possibilities.
Alive with possibilities. The optimism of that time, the sense of possibility of that time, really imprinted upon us, and certainly myself, a sense of what is possible in this country when you have solid leadership and when you actually have a clear direction, and when South Africa is firing on all cylinders. we have obviously since seen South Africa take a turn. And, it's interesting because I'm now the mother of a teenager. I have a 14-year-old who has never lived a life where there is no load shedding. He does not know a South Africa that had just
Water
always on electricity.
coming out of the taps
That just had roads that didn't have holes in them. He was actually remarking the other day with this G20 work that's happening. He asked me, in 2010 when they had the World Cup, were they also fixing all the lights and stuff like they're doing now?
Jeez.
And I said to him, no, because in 2010 the lights worked. They didn't have to run around fixing them all because they all worked at that time. His mind was blown. He couldn't fathom that there was a time where things were just functional. And so generationally, we have a different experience of South Africa. And I believe that the role of our generation is to be able to provide the kind of leadership that can bring back that sense of possibility, that sense of aspiration. We can, our parents sacrificed a lot for us to be here, for us to have the access that we had. In 1992, when I started school, I was the first cohort of Black children in my school. I have to do something with that. I have to be able to take those opportunities that my parents worked very hard for me to have and be able to translate that into dividends and benefits for generations that will come after me. And so, to your point, my reflection is partly, yes, about like, what am I able to do? But it's also about what is our collective generational mission? And I probably can use the generation as, let me say, it's a bit broader than just the people born in my year. But it's really about what is our generational mission? What's our contribution? And I think our contribution is to be that generation that helps transition this country into that next era, because we have the unique perspective of having seen what's possible, but also the unique perspective of not being completely saddled and held back by the baggage of the past. And I believe that's what we are here to do.
But I think maybe even to add on to that, the unique perspective of being able, having a front row seat to the potential of politics to fundamentally change lives.
Yes,
right?
Absolutely.
And I think often I remark at the apathy as it's defined of young people. And I often think to myself, if I was born into a context where I've never known a hopeful South Africa, or South Africa with that is alive with possibilities, as the saying went, no longer goes, but maybe it does. When we'll talk about that.
There was a time when our biggest issue in Joburg was bicycle lanes.
I remember that. I remember that.
Bicycle lane gate.
Oof, I remember that.
Like I wish, I dream that was our biggest issue right now.
and it's an important point you make, because I think you make the point about being a slightly older millennial, and having seen the transitions and the potential of politics to shift outcomes, but there aren't a lot of your age mates in the political space, right? And who have taken up space in defining what politics and political leadership should mean, right? Your contemporaries lead in civil society, lead in business, but have specifically chosen to not lead in politics, right? So I definitely take the point you make around that ability to see the shifts. But why do you think there has been I don't want to point fingers and call names, but an absconding of young Black professionals from wanting to steer and inform the levers of political power?
Well, I think that there are probably, I'd say, three major contributors. One, which I will term the onslaught of
talent,
an anti-intellectual culture that we have adopted. in the political sphere and just in society. Yes. It was the era of clever blacks where we were ostracized actually and belittled for having opinions that were outside of the mainstream political thought of the time. So and that has societal impact. You know, there is now a perception that politics and the domain of politics in an ironic way is counter to the domain of intellectualism or the domain of professionalism. Like in some way being a professional makes you inadequate or incapable of being political in your thought processes or so there is a and I think that results in a collective imposter syndrome, if I must term it something. I often engage with professionals who will start the conversation by saying, I'm not like political or anything. Or like, I don't want to make this about politics because I'm not really into politics. Yeah. However, and then they'll start waxing lyrical about issues that are political. Like, but this thing of the water issues, it's a problem and we don't have water in our taps. They'll complain about corruption or I just want to see things working. How do you think things work? So there's a sense that politics by definition, well, let me rather say politics by definition has now developed different associations. And if you were to ask me, and I reflect on what I think politics is about solutions. I'm a person who is, and has been my whole life, obsessed with solutions. When I see a problem, my brain just defaults to, how do I fix this?
I've seen it do that.
What is the shortest route to the solution here? Politics is the work of collective solutioneering. So once you take into account everybody's collective problems, what then become the outcomes we can agree on and then fund
as a collective
solution, right? So, and I think people forget that. They think it's about all this other stuff that you see on TV. It's about like just all this other stuff that it isn't about. And so my point is that we have to bring back a shared understanding of what the role of politics is, number one. We have to be able to represent politics a lot more diversely. Our country is not going to be defined by liberation-esque politics for the rest of our lives. So we have to now at this juncture redefine what the politics of South Africa is going to look like and who are the voices of this generation that we will allow or empower to speak on our behalf. There are a lot of young people running around saying they are voices of the youth. And I'm like, you don't sound like a voice of the youth. You sound like a person who's trying to get a seat at a table that does not have the interests of youth at all, right? So if we're going to, as young people, say we want to be led by young people, that's fine. But it's not just an age thing. Also, it's about what agenda are you representing? Are you really carrying our agenda as young people or as a generation? And so I think that we have a responsibility actually in this moment to define our politics. It cannot be defined by the endless binary between the ANC and the DA. It's like if you're not ANC and you're not DA,
then
you are nothing. You have no space to exist in politics. You have no views that are relevant to be. Maybe there is a third version. Maybe there are multiple ways of being and ways of advancing views and reaching political compromises. And I would also say, just lastly on the point about kind of the role and why I think professionals have not been participating as much as we would like them to, is also because of what I mentioned earlier. There is a cost, unfortunately. A massive cost. Personal cost, reputational cost, etc. And I will never criticize people who, for them that cost is just too high. I get that. People are struggling. The cost of living is through the roof.
I mean, we've had conversations about amongst ourselves about whether or not the cost we've borne were worth it.
Yes.
In this journey.
So I mean, you are now trying to contend with paying school fees, keeping up car payments, getting a bond, just like being an adult. If you are lucky to even have a job, right? And the having to potentially forego that to expose yourself politically in a space that is, I mean, in a job that's actually rather thankless job for all intents and purposes, is a big ask actually. So I also believe that it does require really, preparing. If people want to go into politics, they have to prepare for it. They have to really think about what that cost is, because you also don't want to have a situation where school fees and things are not being serviced because people have chosen this route. And I'm saying balancing that is key. And asking people, especially at often the peak of their careers, to potentially forego that is a big ask. I was fortunate again, and I suppose in a way I planned for it inadvertently. I was fortunate in that at the time when I made this decision, I was running my own businesses. So I did not face the potential backlash of a corporate manager or a company being, telling me I'm not allowed to get involved in political activities. But that's the reality for a lot of professionals. They can't even tweet freely without potentially getting backlash from a company. So those are things we have to think about. And I actually say we need to turn this back on its head. The work of fixing this country is not up to one or two or a few people to risk it all. It shouldn't be that corporates prohibit people from being politically associating. Why?
It should be encouraged.
It shouldn't be that banks, just because you are now part of a political party, yesterday you were fine, today you're in a political party, now you're a politically exposed person, and we are not financing you for things. In every other sense, you're still exactly the same person.
Yeah.
But you are now suddenly persona non grata.
Yeah.
You are referred to as a PEP.
Yeah.
Because you've chosen to go and contribute to your country.
Yeah.
So there's actually something also fundamentally wrong with just systemically how
prohibitive.
How prohibitive it is for people to make that choice.
Yeah. I think I often, I mean, we see it in you look back to that moment where some of those shifts happened in 2008, and I think we often forget the potential of leaders to impact the social character of the society they lead, right? I think it's been a while since the political establishment took seriously the role of socially engineering South Africa in the direction it should. I mean, there was this wholesale shift in South African politics. Even the way people spoke changed in 2007. Went from an intellectual culture in our politics to Mchana, and it's interesting how like you say the impact of leadership can be critical in defining what a social context looks like. Our present one, however, is, I mean, you can characterize it various ways, but for me, it's been defined by like a chronic indecision, right? There's obviously endemic corruption. There's obviously, but there's a inability. There's incapacity and indecision that permeates our politics. Now, I want to talk a little bit about your experience in government, because you've brought a particularly decisive character to your work in government. You've exposed corruption in your own department. You have been deliberate about putting young people at the forefront of your governing agenda. You have been profoundly decisive in your navigation of government, and I want to get a sense of whether or not you feel it's because effectively what informed that? Is it maybe because you don't come from these political cultures? And is it because maybe you weren't formed and forged by the establishment? Like what is it that allows you to navigate political governance and political spaces in a way that is fundamentally different from the way those in the establishment navigate it? And how would you define that dichotomy, if you can, for me?
So I think the failure or the inability to make decisions is probably a more dangerous trait for a leader than making bad decisions. And my assessment of leaders globally and even locally is that the indecision results in wide-scale political inertia or organizational inertia.
Generally, yeah.
Which when applied at a provincial scale, national scale, or otherwise, can be absolutely devastating for a country. And so it really is a problem. It really, really is a problem. The single thing you need to be able to do, I believe, as a leader, is to make decisions or surround yourself with people whose opinion you trust enough that a decision can emerge from whatever inputs that you've received.
To have a depth of skill that you can depend and lean on to be able to.
Yes, but I mean, from a process perspective, there's no leader who knows everything, who's an expert on everything, understandably. Yeah. But you need to be able to find the route to the answer that you're looking for by whether it's surrounding yourself with the right people, having the right advisors, doing whatever you need to do, but ultimately emerge with a decision. And part of making a decision is about accepting that not everybody's going to be happy with that decision. That's also an integral part of leadership, I believe. Yeah. And I want what I look for in leaders and what builds trust and confidence for me in a leader are people who are open to hearing different views. So listen to the views, but make a decision. But most importantly, own the decision after you've made it. Such that if and when you are criticized about the decision, which is going to happen because not everyone's going to like it, you need to be willing to own that decision. Now, coming to my observations of government and being now in government, it's very clear to me that government suffers from a chronic compliance culture in that what is incentivized, like institutionally in government, is compliance, which is very different from incentivizing performance
or outcomes,
or even innovation. I would actually say innovation is disincentivized. This is not a South African problem. Government bureaucracies in general. I mean, government is so huge. You can't have chronic innovation. It's not a startup. And
the stakes are too high.
The stakes are too high, and you need to be able to build systems, programs, and policies that are broadly applicable, regardless of a lack of uniformity. You know, whether if it's something you're rolling out to 9 different provinces, you have to be comfortable that regardless of who is sitting on the other side of that policy, they are largely not going to mess it up because it's standardized to that extent. So that is the nature, yes, of bureaucracy. But the when you overlay cultural elements and a leadership style element that also does not give room for people who want to potentially speak out against things, or be innovative, etc., then you really run into a number of challenges. This is one of the things I've probably struggled with the most, because I do come from a space where, you know, whether it's my entrepreneurial background or just the fact that I have had the ability to be in leadership in the roles that I've had. So I've always been in a decision-making role. What you also realize in government is that there's layers and layers and layers of decision-making, right? So you need to be able to function within that system, but also then be able to drive outcomes and performance. And so, so I think we have multi-layers of challenges.
Yeah.
But I maintain that leadership matters. There is absolutely no replacement in any institution, in any organization, even in a home environment.
Yeah.
There is no replacement for good leadership.
Yeah.
And a lot of the challenges that we see and experience in the public sector are a function of poor leadership. I'm not discounting the fact that there are other structural issues. I mean, we could talk endlessly about procurement issues that result in corruption. We could talk endlessly about professionalization of the state, etc., and what we need to do. But I'm saying it does start with having leaders who fundamentally understand the role of a leader and perform that job adequately and are doing the work themselves of constantly refining and strengthening themselves as leaders. So I worry that, and I still maintain that it's one of our biggest challenges. A lot of people are capable. There are a lot of capable people working in the public sector. There's a lot of professional people actually working in the public sector. But without the right direction and guidance and leadership, it really doesn't serve any end.
I'm thinking about the compliance culture you speak of, and I think obviously there's an additional layer or series or set of variables in South Africa in that we come out of a period of state capture. Whether they say the 9 wasted years, but I think generally, and perhaps justifiably, it seems a little bit of a fear to spend our way to development because money goes missing in capital projects and money goes missing here and there. So how does a decisive leader, in the context of this broader compliance culture, and the context of an endemic corruption problem, but also a need to deliver strong developmental outcomes, how does a decisive leader in this constitutional regime of ours bridge the two to deliver outcomes, and what kind of reforms does that look like? What does it look like?
So there's a few layers to that question. And maybe it'll be best to use a very simple example, a hypothetical case of a school.
Yeah.
So if you want to build a school, we could use any infrastructure project, but let's use a school as an example. Now, what is the outcome that you are seeking? Well, you're building a school because you need to deliver education services, number one.
Yeah.
So
Ideally.
And so the school itself must also be able to, it must have certain components of it. You need the classrooms, you need bathrooms, you need play facilities, you need this and that, right? But before you even get there, you need to just deliver the school. So one of the challenges that we have, even in just the simple thing of delivering schools and building schools, is how cumbersome that process has now become. In other words, it's not as simple as the Department of Education saying, we need 10 schools this year, let's go build them.
Yeah.
What has to then happen is, infrastructure development department actually would be responsible for that type of project. It would be subject to budget availability. So that would be informed by national government and the budgets that are available to build schools. But even in the actual work of building a school, the amount that government ends up paying to build a simple, let me call it matchbox style school, we find ourselves paying 3 or 4 times more because of the multiple layers upon layers of intermediaries, contractors, subcontractors, project delays, project management in general as a function, and so the number of steps and the number of role players involved in the simple act of building a school creates an outcome where, yes, maybe one day you get a school, but it's a subpar product.
You paid 4 times what the private sector would pay.
5-6 times what the private sector would pay. So then a narrative then becomes or locates itself in the public space that says, private sector so much better, government so terrible, let's privatize everything.
Okay.
Which is just not factually correct. True. It's not true. But we're not doing enough of an assessment of what are the cost drivers actually that result in a school costing us 6 times more. And we need to assess that. So number one, education and school building, in my opinion, it's a core function of government. And it's not a profit center. So there's absolutely no reason why for-profit companies should really be involved in that work. Government must build its own schools. And we should be able, at the very least, to deliver simple services like picking up trash, building schools, etc., etc. Already there, you've cut out like a whole lot of intermediaries. And you're also able to manage that timeline and that project management. Of course, that requires that you also have the competencies internally to do so. Roads are another one. I mean, I've been walking around the city and you would have seen some of the videos I've put out. But they are like giant, unfinished holes, projects all over our city.
Kimberley big holes.
When we started digging deeper into this, why is this the case? Why are there all these unfinished projects everywhere? Well, it's because infrastructure is aging, a water pipe bursts. A member of the community reports this burst pipe. Joburg Water will come. Maybe they will then have to dig in the ground to expose the pipe so that they can start fixing the pipe. Mind you, also it takes forever to even get them there.
I was about to say.
But then they eventually get there. They open up, they fix the pipe. Oops, when they get to the pipe, they realize, oh no, there's an electric cable here. We can't actually touch this area because there's one of Eskom's cables is here. So we've got to call Eskom to come in to move their cable so we can work on our pipe. Eskom and I must log a call with them. Takes them another couple of weeks to decide to come out. The water's leaking the whole time.
And the excavation is open.
Yeah, the excavation's open.
Tires.
The road is closed. Like stuff it's a mess. Now after Eskom hopefully comes, and the work is now done. Now Joburg roads, if it's on a public road, the person who comes to close the hole must be Joburg roads.
Okay.
Joburg roads must get an external contractor who's going to be on tender or whatever to actually come and fix that road. So the simple act of just fixing a hole in the road, which started as a burst pipe,
is 3 entities.
It's 3 entities, and it's months and months and months, sometimes years of work. And God forbid that, and in many instances, by the way, you restart the project because sometimes after they finish, the pipe gets broken again. Now, for me, these are low-hanging fruits. These are not ideological issues, actually. This is like, what is the shortest route to solving this problem? The shortest route to solving this problem is to, one, shorten the production chain as best as you can, right? And we need to then look at what are the various institutions and the institutional machinery that we need to be able to deliver the outcome. Because we're talking about outcomes here. Everybody in this chain is focused on
the compliance incentive versus the IC.
How do I comply to my little section? But no one is actually looking at the end goal, which is we need to fix this road. We need to fix this water pipe in the shortest time possible. How do we build out the right institutional or governance framework that allows us to do that? Currently, that is not the case. So that is a big headache in general of mine. I have similar experiences in my own area. And And I find that if we don't address and look at some of these systemic weaknesses, let me say, you really you keep rehashing and having the same discussions. It's too simple to say, oh, it's just corruption. Yes, there's corruption. 100% there's corruption. But we're not looking even systemically at, okay, how does this system incentivize corruption? Because it does.
It does.
The system, the way that things are set up and structured incentivizes corruption. You have to, I'm not saying you have to, but you'll find that people will say they charge the extra 10, 20, 30% markup, because there's...
And there's so many points at which you could charge the 50%
Yes, you can
markup.
charge it at so many points, and there's so many different people in the chain that have an opportunity to ask for a cut. Why do you allow that?
What has been your most kind of jarring experience of the lethargic nature of government bureaucracy? Because I'm sure, and I often read this document and set out a bold vision for South Africa, but so does Chapter 2 of the Constitution, the Bill of Rights. So we're not short on bold visions, right? But what has been your most kind of jarring experience that has kind of hampered or stifled your ability to deliver something that you thought shouldn't be impossible to deliver, or is critical to making some of those systemic changes? Because I know you have. Whether it's trying to digitize procurement here, or whether it's trying to,
I don't know if I can call it a jarring experience, but it's really hard to get used to. Is the manner in which people are so demoralized, actually. A lot of people who are working in the public sector in different areas have lost the fight or have given up on the fight.
Because you lose sight of your contribution's impact, right?
Yes, and I think that there's just, like I'm saying, there's a lot of capable people.
Yeah.
But over time, I think people have learned that it doesn't serve you really to be the hardest working person in the room or to be the most capable person in the room. It's not a merit-based environment necessarily, where you know that if you are the best performer, you are going to get the job. And I think that is probably one of the things that has eroded our public service more than anything, is a reversing of the incentive system. And you see this even in companies and different organizations. I mean, why a lot of private companies work and stuff is that if you do well, one, you're likely to get a bonus, but you are in this constant competitive environment. And by and large, you know that if you do well, there is a chance that you will be seen and you'll be able to get promoted or something. It's not a given in the public sector. So adjusting to that idea is difficult for me. And even this idea of performance management is not. It's not culturally embedded in the way that other organizations that I've experienced are, which is difficult for me because I'm a performance-driven person.
Yeah.
You know this.
Yeah.
I'm like, if there's no output, if you're not performing, like, you're welcome to see yourself out the door.
Yeah. Consequence management, follows.
But actually, that's actually the thing. The culture of non-consequence management is a real problem, and people kind of actually get shocked when you want to relieve them of their duties because of performance. So, so I think it's something that we have to do a lot of work there. There's a lot of discussion now, and I commend the Public Service Commission for what they've done around professionalizing the public service, or as they call it, professionalization. But I still think that there's an let me say the weighting has really rather been on professional qualifications. It's good. It's a good foundation. But it doesn't answer the question of performance culture.
Yeah. And depoliticizing it.
And depoliticization. It doesn't answer also the questions around how we build leadership competence and qualities in government, and how we create a performance culture. And it's something I think about a lot. Of how we get there. It's not impossible. I do think it can be done, but I also recognize that it's not necessarily what people are incentivized to do.
I wanna quickly just chat a little bit about some of the you've got strong views on public procurement as a lever for spurring development, but we often view things in this binary. You see it in topical discussions happening around BE at the moment. We even view in a binary this idea that you can't have leadership that represents your beliefs, but also that actually represents your interests, right? And you must sacrifice your principled beliefs for delivery. How does that inform your kind of orientation around your work around politics, and what not just Rise's theory of changes, but your personal role in effecting Rise's theory of change?
So that's like 3 questions in one. But let me maybe start with the end, the last one, which is, and I want to put what you said perhaps a little bit more coarsely. There is a very unfortunate narrative that has, that sort of permeates our public discourse right now. And it's the undercurrent that I really
struggle with.
But also I just really reject as an undercurrent. This idea that economic justice in the form of economic empowerment policies and such are necessarily result in corruption or equate to corruption. So in other words, Black people being involved in public procurement in any shape or form inherently results in corruption. That for me is it's a very weird narrative. But also because it extends, I'd say broadly. Watching the progressive disintegration of the capability of the state and the erosion of leadership and governance over time has also embedded this idea that Black leadership broadly is incompetent, and that we need another option.
When Black leadership once delivered growth of 5.5 year on year,
in other words,
it created the middle class.
Correct. And so there's this narrative now that exists, even if it's not said as plainly, that because of the failures of one political party, there's this conflation and this questioning of Black leadership as a whole. And number 2, that empowerment necessarily equates to corruption because the objective of empowerment is theft.
Or incompatible with merit.
It's incompatible with just like production and actually
and value
and value and creation. So that's a serious issue I have. Not to mention that, and I don't want to go down the BEE rabbit hole, but BEE, as we know, as a policy, has a number of different elements to it. It speaks to skills development. It speaks to socioeconomic development, management control, employment equity, local economic development, a whole number of indicators beyond just, enterprise development, supplier development. So it speaks to a whole lot of other elements.
Yeah. It's a principal legislation responsible for closing gender pay gaps. It's
holistic, quite frankly. So if you want to talk about broad-basedness, it is holistic in how at least it envisions the impact.
Yeah.
So this narrowing also of this idea that BEE is only about government procurement,
nonsensical,
and is only about one element being ownership is a very bizarre one as well. It's anyway, less on that. So my sense and what I believe the work is that has to be done is actually for me, it's part of the broader nation building concept. People think nation building is about kumbayaism and rainbow nationism. And they undermine and underestimate those concepts. The idea of building, so moving from being, the first version of South Africa, which we are a whole group of multiple people living under one roof, to actually being a nation. I think that's the unfinished work. I think the work of nation building is the unfinished work. And the work of nation building requires us to confront some of these topics and be able to provide constructive solutions on how we move forward with them.
And not ignore them.
We can't ignore them.
Yeah.
We shouldn't ignore them.
Yeah.
I have had the good fortune, actually, of growing up in a very multicultural society. I've lived in different communities. I've gone to multiracial schools. I have dated across the color lines. I have friends of all sorts. I can attest to the fact that there is power, there is value. We are our best selves when we bring our best to the table. Diversity is our superpower. But diversity must have the kind of leadership that can channel all that energy into the nation building or into the national project.
Just why has the establishment failed there? Just quickly.
Well, that's a good question. So I think we started somewhere, but unless you're able to create the kind of economic structure and social structure that echoes what you are saying at a policy level, you don't achieve that. Because people can only be told for so long that we are one. Well, we can't be one because I'm still using a pit toilet 30 years later. You've got 6 Ferraris in your house in Sandhurst. So we are not one.
Or for the extent to which an interaction can happen on an equal footing, I must move into white suburbia. I must work in a white corporate. I must so it imposes a disproportionate burden on me.
100%. So my interest with spatial equality and spatial justice is actually premised on that. How do you build a nation with people you don't see? With people you don't know? How do you build social bonds with people you've never sat next to in a bus?
People you use.
Yes. I mean, public transport, for example. Even public transport in South Africa is racialized. How do you build a nation with people you've never had an opportunity to empathize with, to see in their natural environments, to go to school with, to shop in the same grocery stores with? And we have failed to look at the systems, not just of exclusion, but the systems of separation, of division that make nation building possible. So even the economic question, it has to be answered. It's not about saying we're going to have like a small portion of society being wealthy and then make a few charitable contributions to others. How do we ensure that every South African has a stake in this country? and a stake in its well-being. And there are examples internationally that you look at. And in fact, I read Lee Kuan Yew's biography. When they embarked on their home ownership project as a country, one of the first things they embarked on as Singapore was a project of getting everybody to own homes. And it was publicly financed, and there was a plan around that. But it wasn't just to put a roof over people's heads. What they understood at that time was that home ownership anchors people to the country, and it gives them a stake.
Yeah.
They need to have some skin in the game.
Yeah.
So that was the starting point. And then they also were very intentional about integrating suburbs. So their method, by the way, was just, it's wild when you think about it. They literally had suburban quotas where they said, we want 30% to be Chinese, 20% to be Malay, 15% to be Indian, and so on and so forth. They forced the integration because it wasn't going to happen just on its own. I'm not suggesting we should do it in that manner or use such a blunt instrument, but I'm saying you need to,
outcomes.
If you intend truly to build a nation, you need to look at all the elements of nation building. Language is another one. Countries like Singapore's a great example. They had a policy of bilingual education because they decided that we have to be able to talk to each other.
Yeah.
So there has to be English, and there has to be not second language, equal language.
Okay.
So you learn in two languages. It's not that you have a first, second, and third class language. You have two languages that have equal prominence. And so whether you are, if you're Chinese, Singaporean background, you can equally think and operate in both. And I'm saying, what have we done to bring so many people who are on the margins of our economy into the mainstream economy by making it possible for them? And so the social justice question for me is beyond just thinking around the human rights elements. I think human rights are the foundation, but we have to be able to say, what are the instruments socially? What are the instruments economically that we use to make these things possible? And if we don't deal with it at the micro level, we just don't get there.
Yeah. I want to ask you one last question, but in asking it, I want to extract a bit of a provocation from you. So we've defined the crisis, right, or the crises, polycrisis. What will it take to transition us out of this, and what kind of leadership do we need to do that? But the provocation is to say, how do you invest in that journey people who have never tangibly seen the impact and potential impact of political power to shift their outcomes, and have only been confronted with a South African experience punctuated and defined by despair? What does leading a country of people who look like you, around your age or mine, and investing them in the work of moving the country forward with their participation look like?
South Africa is actually at a very interesting point right now, in that we are witnessing in real time a political transition. The election results from last year's election signaled the beginning of that journey, and a reforming and reshaping, I think, of what South African politics is going to look like for at least the immediate future, in that it's going to be defined by multiple political voices. It's going to be defined by coalition governance, alliances. It's going to be defined by also newness, because in this transition, space has been created for new political voices, new political players, such as Rise and such as others, to emerge. Now, I don't imagine that everybody. So there's this idea that there's just going to be one big moment and overhaul of the country. I don't believe that is going to happen. I think that we are in a transition right now, but what we do in the next 4 years leading up to the next election is going to be very important. And it's going to start with next year's election, the 2026 elections. So work has to be done to get people back to the polls. I believe in democracy. I believe in the institutions of democracy. So I believe in elections, and I believe that people need to participate in a democracy if they want it to work. And I think that parties, especially some of the new ones, the various civic organizations and people who are doing work around voter registration, civic education, etc., have a very important role to play in bringing people back to the table. You can't
be political parties alone.
Yes, it can't be political parties alone, but you also can't expect the change to come from somewhere, like from somewhere else. You know, I know that it's often very tempting to just want to see revolutionary whole-scale change. Hey, I get that. Psychologically, I get that. I would love to, you know, have a six-pack. And I would love to be able to have that happen overnight. Tomorrow, ideally. Yeah. That's not how six-packs work. It's also not how countries work. You have to show up consistently and do that work consistently. We have a lot of actually institutional mechanisms available to us. People don't use them. One of them are political parties, but there are many other channels for which people can get involved and make their contributions. So my sense is it starts with people coming back to the table. There's people complain a lot and say, oh, there's too many political parties. I don't know why that should be the thing that makes you turn away. There are political parties. The reason there are more political parties is because clearly there's a need. There's a need. There's a market for these political parties. So now that you have all these political parties, choose one. You can't say you're not choosing because there's too many. Choose one. And then when you choose one, decide how do you then want to serve and get involved, whatever that may be. And so my sense is our work is to bring people back. Repoliticize, bring people who would otherwise not be deemed political players into the fold, because I think that's also where it lies. People want to see, you know, non-political people. Come, here's the platforms exist. We need to see people who are not even part of the establishment getting involved and raising their hand and being part of
that.
Getting in the arena, basically. So I think that the next 4 years will be really critical in how we re-engage young people, but not just young people. I think young people are critical in making this possible. But I also don't believe it's only up to young people. I think that, you know, our generation has you and I are different generations, but
we're both millennials.
Okay. But I'm like an OG millennial.
Yeah. Like, I just made it. I almost got bounced, but like
I had a Yahoo email account.
So Did you? Didn't have a Yahoo.
Okay.
I didn't. But I remember MySpace.
Okay, no, Chev, you are
but
kind of.
I used to misbehave.
I had a blog.
I didn't have a blog.
No, you see.
I didn't have
But anyway, so my point is we have to re-engage people in politics. We have to come back to the table. And the answer is not disengagement. The answer is active re-engagement, repoliticizing the professional class, especially people who feel like they otherwise are apolitical or have no,
because they anchor culture
or have no role to play. They actually really do have a role to play. They need to come back to the table. They need to make their voices heard and participate in politics. And I often say to people, politics is not like soccer. I don't watch soccer, but I marvel at soccer fans who stay attached to these teams, failure after failure after failure.
Can't be here.
Politics is not like that. Politics
and shouldn't be.
Must be transactional. It must be. If democracy is going to be robust and it's going to work, politics must be transactional. You need to be able to say, this is the vehicle we're getting into that's going to take us where we need to go. If it fails to do that, we get out. you get into another vehicle, 100%. You move your vote or you move your participation. I think that's the only way we really get to a point where we start seeing a results and outcome-driven politics.
Chair, thank you. This was rich. And I think one of those things that really give one an insight into the texture of the crisis. I think we all understand the issues, but very we all have a very kind of baseline understanding of what some of the issues are. So it's really interesting to get a perspective from somebody who's not only in government but has a kind of new lens on government and hasn't been jaded by some of the establishment cultures that generally inform our politics. So thank you for your time, thank you for your insights, and thank you for gracing us on the inaugural episode of the Rise of Mzansi podcast.
Yay!
And I don't know if there's anything last you want to say before we close.
Well, I just think that we need more platforms like this. We need to have more conversations like this. And I hope that somewhere, somehow, it will stir a few people to action.
Big time.
We need, you asked a question earlier, which I answered, but one thing we seem to underestimate is just how big government is and the scale of a government. At all its levels. It's not the work of one person. It's not even the work of like 100 people. It needs thousands of us at all levels of government, in the different institutions of government and quasi-government, to get stuck into the work of fixing this thing. So I really hope that this will stir something in one or two people who will see it as an invitation to raise their hands and get involved.
That was the National Chairperson of Rise Mzansi, the MEC for Agriculture and Rural Development in Gauteng, and a member of the Unite for Change Leadership Council. I've always wanted to say like and subscribe, but now I get to say it because we finally have a podcast. So please do like and subscribe, share our content as far and wide as possible. We'll be doing many more of these, and thank you.
Thank you.
Awesome.